Hello everybody and welcome to part 2 of What If Anakin Killed Darth Sidious after Order 66. It's been a while since I did a part 2, but I was really feeling this. It gets, a little wild, so I hope you enjoy this concept. Again, first one was kind of goes along the lines of what we tend to do. This one goes out there a bit, so hope you enjoy this part 2. And as a reminder, last video ended with Anakin killing Palpatine, and ultimately Obi-Wan and Yoda watched Anakin explode into the underworld of Coruscant. But the video ended with us thinking Anakin just might have survived, and of course I highly recommend going and watching part 1. It, of course, plays a huge role in where everyone is at this point. Alright, let's get right into it. Grandmaster Yoda was walking slowly to his ship on the planet Tython. It has been 10 years since his exile after the fall of Anakin Skywalker and the Jedi Order. The Republic was rebuilt, and the Jedi Order was set to begin again as Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka Tano were training young Luke and Leia Skywalker, along with a group of around 100 Jedi Knights that survived Order 66. Yoda kept in contact with them, and after 10 years, he was making his way back to Coruscant, to the nearly rebuilt Jedi Temple. He was finally at peace, and ready to resume his role as a guide this time, and as his ship came into view, Yoda could feel everything around him go cold. Yoda looked around as plants died, trees immediately lost their leaves, the sky became dark, and a storm seemed to surround the area where Yoda was standing. After 10 years in exile, Yoda felt like it was all for nothing in this very moment. He ignited his lightsaber for what could be the first fight since the duel with Anakin, and quickly Yoda felt his throat tighten. He grabbed at it, and then his lightsaber went flying out of his hand as his wrist was snapped. Whoever this was, they were beyond powerful. Yoda felt himself lift into the air. He was older, weaker than 10 years ago, and Yoda watched as a ghost emerged from the shadows, or at least what Yoda thought should be a ghost. It was someone Yoda thought long dead. Anakin Skywalker emerged from the shadows, eyes yellow, red lightsaber crackling, burn marks covered him, and he wore a breathing respirator over his nose and his mouth. Anakin walked up to Yoda, and Yoda knew now why he didn't recognize Anakin in the Force. He truly was gone, except for maybe just a spark far below everything. This was only the Sith Lord now that had taken over Anakin, and the Sith Lord spoke in a menacing, nearly mechanical voice, saying, "At last I reveal myself to the Jedi. At last I have my revenge." Yoda went for a force push, but the red lightsaber went right through his chest, and Anakin crushed Yoda with the Force. He slammed him to the ground, dead, once and for all. Anakin picked up his green little lightsaber and put it on his belt. The Jedi would pay for taking everything from him. For 10 years, he has worked in the shadows for this moment, and now Anakin remembered those 10 years. He remembered waking up on Coruscant, the dirty, decaying underworld of Coruscant. He had woken up behind a small restaurant with a four-armed basilisk man looking down on him. He was a chef of some kind, and he told Anakin that he dragged his body over here after finding it in a burning speeder. In that moment, all of the rage came back to Anakin after he remembered. Yoda, Obi-Wan, they threw him down here. Anakin managed to thank the man and stumbled to a HoloNet broadcast. Chancellor Padme Amidala was being sworn in after the revelation of Palpatine working with Skywalker to take down the Jedi. Anakin slammed the broadcast with his fist and fell to his knees. He was lightheaded, burned, broken. He should be dead, but here he was, alive, and he promised himself that day that he would have his revenge. The revenge of the Sith. Anakin eventually got off-world of Coruscant. He couldn't stand the place. If anyone recognized him, he would be killed or arrested. And that included Padme, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and his 2 children. Luckily, Anakin had the advantage of being presumed dead, and eventually Anakin got off-world, flying into wild space in the unknown regions. He had somewhat of a plan, but it would require a great amount of searching for the right person. Thrawn. In the Clone Wars, Anakin had worked with a man named Thrawn, and Thrawn revealed that he was looking to partner up with a galactic power to fight against an emerging threat in the unknown regions. But at the time, Thrawn decided against working with the Republic as their democratic ways allowed for too many different points of view. Now, if Anakin could find Thrawn, perhaps he could convince him to join him, and together they could create a galactic empire. 2 rulers, Anakin and Thrawn. And Anakin spent around 5 years in wild space, alone, searching for Thrawn. Over time, he developed himself a breathing apparatus to cover his mouth and his nose. The speeder explosion on Coruscant hindered his breathing, but this fixed it. He became extremely strong in the dark side of the Force, focusing all of his emotions on pure power. And one day, Anakin was making camp on the planet Lasatra when he finally stumbled upon a small group of Chiss warriors. The group surrounded him, and Anakin could have destroyed them, but instead, he said that his name was Anakin Skywalker, and he was looking for Thrawn. Soon enough, the group went and found him, and Thrawn emerged. Anakin explained his proposal. If the 2 of them were to work together, they could create an empire capable of protecting Thrawn's people from any threat. Anakin needed an army, and Thrawn needed an empire to help his people. Eventually, the 2 of them agreed, but Thrawn said that he could not spare his people as an army. But he had another idea, a better idea. And so Anakin and Thrawn took off again to a new world. Thrawn was perhaps the most intelligent man that Anakin had ever met, and so Anakin trusted him as they landed on Dathomir together. Thrawn noted that this was a different version of Anakin, but perhaps it was the version that Thrawn needed for their grand plans. After a long walk, they eventually found a secret Night Sister Morgan Elsbeth. Thrawn explained that he and Morgan had long-term plans of building an army for themselves, but with Anakin here as well, they could build an army now and use it to fight the Empire. Anakin didn't understand. How could they build an empire? But then Morgan began to call upon Night Sister magic, and the 2 Night Sisters rose from the ground, undead Night Sisters. This would work, and the army would be undead clone troopers. Together, Anakin, Thrawn, and Morgan Elsbeth traveled to Geonosis, where the bodies of thousands of clone troopers resided, buried under the sand. The Clone Wars had seen 2 major battles here, and the thousands of dead clones were still here, in the sand. They would soon serve Skywalker as undead members of their army. After around a year, all of the fallen clones on Geonosis had been discreetly revived and brought to the planet Hoth, an empty planet covered in snow where no one would ever find them, and the undead clones, completely loyal to Anakin, stayed, waiting for orders. Anakin and Thrawn now controlled an army of thousands, roughly 10,000 undead clones from Geonosis and other selected planets where terrible battles had taken place. And over the next 5 years, Anakin and Thrawn secretly orchestrated small, untraceable attacks on the New Republic buildings. New Republic everything. They would use the undead clones to hit medical facilities, communication stations, even disrupt cloning operations on Kamino, eventually forcing Kamino to stop production until they figured out what was going wrong. After these 5 years, the New Republic was imploding upon itself, and they had no idea why or how. And now we are back to the present day, as Anakin breaks out of the memory. This was the perfect moment for attack. All of the Jedi were in the temple, awaiting Yoda's return. But Yoda was no longer the Jedi returning today. With Yoda's lightsaber on his belt, Anakin boarded his ship and met up with the fleet of 5,000 undead clones. At one point, they had boarded a Republic cruiser and taken it over for themselves. Another 5,000 clones were spread across the galaxy, led by Thrawn, forcing resources away from Coruscant. And with the fleet, Anakin jumped to hyperspace for the grand play. Chancellor Padme Amidala was visiting the rebuilding Jedi Order in the temple on Coruscant. She was checking to see the progress of Luke and Leia. As she made her way up the stairs, she would pass a few Jedi that she'd become quite familiar with. This included Cal Kestis, Caleb Dume, Luminara Unduli, and Kelleran Beck. Padme eventually found herself in a training room where Luke and Leia practiced lightsaber forms with Obi-Wan and Ahsoka. This warmed her heart, and in the 10-year-old Luke she could see the boy she met on Tatooine, Anakin. Oh, how she missed Anakin. She remembered Anakin, she thought about the New Republic, kind of imploding upon itself, and she didn't know why. And while zoned out, Padme received a call. The New Republic cruiser that had gone missing years ago had just returned, and ships were launching from it above Coruscant. The clearance codes were checked out, and it was all clones on board. This was strange, and Padme said she would make her way back soon enough. This cruiser had been missing for years, and the clones aboard it were still just returning to Coruscant, like nothing was wrong. This was all very weird. Padme got up to leave after greeting the Jedi and her children, and she began to descend the steps in the temple, but she saw clone troopers filing in through the large door at the front. This was extremely peculiar. Their armor was broken, dirty, and the clones all walked in a way that just seemed off. Padme had a bad feeling about all of this. She had to alert Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, and the Jedi below seemed to have a bad feeling as well. Padme saw around 15 surviving Jedi walk up to the clones and ask what was going on, why they were entering the temple. The clones all made room for someone to enter through the middle of them, and Padme had her world shatter as she realized who this was. Entering through the main doors, Anakin Skywalker walked right into the Jedi Temple with his own new army, and nobody ever saw it coming. Padme hid around a corner and watched as Anakin dropped Yoda's lightsaber to the ground. Then, Anakin ignited his own red lightsaber and attacked the 15 Jedi. The clones began firing at the Jedi as well, and all 15 died quickly to Anakin's red saber, or the clones' blasters. Padme sprinted back up the stairs, hiding, and clicked a button on her datapad. This alerted the clone army of the Republic, stationed on Coruscant, of an invasion on her position. They would be here soon, but they would be fighting their own brothers, or some undead version of their brothers. It would be chaos. Padme ran up the stairs where Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and her 2 children were about to leave. Padme demanded they all go back in and wait for the clone army to come save them. Down inside the Jedi Temple, Anakin was doing what he did 10 years ago, walking through the Jedi Temple with a brainwashed clone army on his side, cutting down each and every Jedi. Over the years, around 100 Jedi had been recruited back into the Order, and every single one of them was here, as they were awaiting the return of Grand Master Yoda. He would never come. Instead, Anakin had returned, and Anakin made his way through the temple. He knew that Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, his children had to be here. He would find them. He would let his children become his apprentices once Kenobi and Ahsoka were gone. Anakin cut down 3 more Jedi as he felt something in the Force. Through another door in front of him, clones poured into the fight, but these were not his undead clones. They were the real ones, here to fight for the Republic, and they charged into battle. Anakin jumped up onto a set of stairs as he watched the undead clones run into battle with the real clones. It was pure chaos, and Anakin moved up the stairs, letting them fight it out. Eventually, Anakin came upon a training room door, and he could feel familiar presences inside of it. Anakin entered to find Obi-Wan and Ahsoka alone. For the last 10 years, Anakin's former master and apprentice had become the 2 strongest Jedi in the rebuilding Order. They were far more of a formidable match than the old, exiled Grand Master Yoda, and Anakin stared at his old friends, his yellow eyes burning with hatred. Obi-Wan took everything from him, and Ahsoka had chose to join him. Today, they would die. The training room in the Jedi Temple, usually a place of harmony and growth, where young Jedi honed their skills, where Anakin had honed his skills. But today, it was a battleground. Anakin Skywalker, once a hero of this Jedi Order, had his red lightsaber ignited with a glow as he faced off against his former friends. The room was dimly lit, casting shadows across all of the combatants. Anakin's yellow eyes bore into Obi-Wan's blue ones, filled with a hatred and anger that consumed him. Anakin lunged at Obi-Wan, his red lightsaber slashing through the air with precision. Obi-Wan, still carrying the weight of their history, met the attack with his own blue lightsaber. The clashing of their sabers echoed through the chamber, sending sparks in all directions. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka thought Anakin had been long dead, so seeing him here today was haunting. It was something straight out of the nightmares that Obi-Wan had had for years. He'd finally trained himself to let go, but now here was Anakin, once again trying to kill him. But Obi-Wan and Ahsoka fought to protect Padme and the children of Skywalker. They would do what they must. Anakin's rage-fueled strikes pushed Obi-Wan back, and Ahsoka jumped in to help, igniting her 2 blue lightsabers, joining the fray. The 3 combatants engaged in a familiar duel of lightsabers, their movements a blur of skill. Anakin's mastery of the Force gave him an advantage, allowing him to launch attacks with the Force at his opponents, while maintaining the offensive with his lightsaber. The room's training equipment became collateral damage in the battle. Droids and training remotes were torn apart by stray lightsaber strikes, Force blasts. Sparks rained down from damaged equipment, adding to the chaos of the fight. Despite Anakin's immense power, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka fought well together. They blocked Anakin's attacks, seeking an opening to strike back. But Anakin's relentless onslaught continued, and he pushed them to the brink of exhaustion. Ahsoka knew that the only way to end this conflict was to bring Anakin back to the light, so she used the Force to reach out to him, attempting to break through the darkness that consumed him. Her voice was filled with emotion. Ahsoka pleaded, "Anakin, please come back to the light." And for a moment, Anakin's frenzied attacks wavered, and a flicker of doubt did cross his mind. In the deepest part of him, he had love for Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, but the darkness within him overtook it, and he redoubled his efforts, launching a devastating Force push that sent Obi-Wan and Ahsoka sprawling. As the two Jedi struggled to regain their footing, Anakin advanced, his red lightsaber poised to strike the final blow. The outcome of this duel hung in the balance, and Anakin rose his lightsaber to cut them both down. But as Anakin swung, his lightsaber was pulled from his hand. Anakin turned quickly to see a young boy holding his lightsaber. And Anakin knew immediately, this was his son. And from behind the boy, Padme was sprawling out in fear, trying to get back to Luke. And Leia was beside Padme. The 3 of them had been hiding away. Anakin looked to Luke, a brave young boy trying to save his friends. And Anakin looked to Padme, fear in her eyes as she looked at Anakin, fear of what he had become. Anakin looked to his children and asked them to join him. Luke was so young, but so much like Anakin at that age. He looked at his father, and the young boy said that he could never join someone as evil as him. Luke said that he was a Jedi, like his father before him, so young, but so brave. And these words hurt Anakin more than any lightsaber ever could. He failed. He didn't just fail his children, he failed himself, Padme, the Jedi. Anakin realized here and now, after 10 years blinded by the darkness, that everything was his fault. He gave up a life of happiness with his children, with his wife, because of power. He wanted power to save Padme, and yet here she was in front of him, afraid of him. They betrayed him. No, Anakin betrayed himself, he knew now, and he fell to his knees, letting go of the darkness. And he felt a lightsaber impale him from the back. Obi-Wan was completing the mission, and Anakin knew it was the right choice. Anakin took one final look to Padme, Luke, and Leia, and told them he was truly, deeply sorry. And in his dying moments, Anakin used one final move in the Force. He Force projected himself to Dathomir, where Morgan Elsbeth resided, controlling the undead clones. This was a power in the Force that would have likely killed Anakin, whether he was dying or not, so this was the perfect time to use it. As he projected himself across the galaxy in front of Morgan, Anakin used the Force to kill her, and as Morgan died, so did every single undead clone trooper. Anakin came back to the training room for one final second, and realized now that Padme was holding him as he died. A tear rolled down his cheek. He hated what he became, betraying himself. But Padme and his children brought him back in the final moments, and here and now, Anakin died. This had been the ultimate test for the new Jedi Order and the rebuilding Republic, but they survived it. Yoda was gone. 50 of the 100 Jedi in the temple had been defeated, but in the end, they survived. Thrawn knew it was over as his undead clones died, and he went back to his Chiss ascendancy. And over the years, Luke and Leia would become what their father should have become, the greatest Jedi ever. Chancellor Padme Amidala and her 2 children would lead the galaxy to true peace, with the Sith destroyed for good this time, and there was peace. And that's where part 2 ends, the final part. Folks, what did we think? It was kind of bold, right? Maybe? Let me know what you thought. I had fun writing it, fun talking about it. Hopefully I'll have fun editing it and reading your comments. Be nice, alright? Anyways, I appreciate you guys. Thanks a ton, and I'll see you in the next... Wait, what do you want to see tomorrow? Fanfiction tomorrow. I have one ready, but I might do a different one, so let me know. Anyways, I'll see you in the next video.